Well,
I'm back in a minute.
sorry that you're feeling like a hamster.
No, I'm sorry. It was just a joke. Oh, we're live.
Okay, so it is 10:25. It's Friday, February 12th. This is the second half of the morning for Senate Natural Resources and Energy. What I wanted to do with the committee this afternoon was, now, is two things before we adjourn. One is I've been talking about that I've been collecting what we've been taking in and turning it into an outline for a bill to be developed by the committee. So I am going to screen share and put up that outline. And then I'd like us to, Jude, can you turn on screen sharing for me, please? Thank you. And I'm gonna have to figure out, so can people see my screen?
See it, but it's hard to read.
All right, so, I can't see what you see, which is pretty awkward. You know how it fills the screen for most people.
It's very small print.
You need a second monitor, Senator Bray, and then you'll be able to screen share and see it on a different monitor. IT can get you one.
Okay, well, for this morning,
Yeah,
let me do this, and because I can see the original that I'm sharing, and then tell me when it's at a size that's legible to you all, and I'll just keep making it bigger.
That's good.
That's good. That's
okay.
Very good.
Okay, that's great.
That's too big.
Too big.
Goldilocks.
All right. So, why don't I do this first? I'll make it a little smaller so you can see more of it and just flip through it. So you see what's in here. I put down some goals, means, program design things, what our current situation is, targets 10 years out, elements that would be in a program that we're designing based on our conversation, things to be defined based on what we've heard so far, a category that's probably a lot like this, things to learn more about, and then my regular refrain to the committee, our standing questions. What questions do you want answered, and from whom would you like to hear? So, well, now I'll go back up, and I'm going to turn track changes on so that we can edit and discuss this thing. The earlier versions of this were called something like the Weatherization Act. And the more I've thought about it is what I think has brought out the most energy and interest in the room is the idea of saving Vermonters money. While we as a Natural Resource Committee are actually focused on reducing greenhouse gases, and the two go together. But so that's a proposed name, and entirely happy to hear other suggestions, but it's less wonky than weatherization at scale. It's talking about who we're talking to and what we're trying to offer them, a chance to save on energy. So if anyone has any comments on that, if now or in the future, Senator McDonald.
I always ask what's the problem we're trying to solve? And, the other thing is, once upon a time, things were in such and such a way. So this is my way of leading to the question. Some of our colleagues will say to us, why are you doing this now? Didn't we establish a global solutions committee to work on this sort of thing? And that's a reasonable question. And when we look at this, are we going to be thinking of how it complements what's going on in the Global Warming Solutions Act committee, and how do we frame it in a way that doesn't appear to be duplicating or be easily dismissed because it's duplicative or because people don't want to face this. They want to wait until the other committee does the grunt work. So that's what would like to take in as we take a look at this.
Okay. Senator Westman?
My comment on the other side of that too is, and it goes along with Mark, from the same respect, people would say on the economic side that OEO and the CAP agencies are designed to help help people use less energy. And are we getting in their way? So we created a Global Warming Solutions Act and the Climate Council, but on the other side, what are we doing in that? And I think that goes along with the same question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And we put those organizations that Senator Westman just mentioned in a difficult position because we haven't provided a system of long-range funding, and some could argue they're just driving up the cost of used EVs. At the same time, we're trying to get used cars to poor people at a lower price. So yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
And just, I agree. These are valid questions, and we'll certainly, I think you're right, we'll hear them. My two initial responses, and if other people want to toss things in, I'll add them in. In terms of the Climate Council, because they're only going to do a plan in 21, and then the plan would go through rulemaking in 22, and then the rule would have to go in effect in like 23. My answer is we can't afford to wait. Why would we wait? This is a real opportunity. There's probably at least a 2-year delay by waiting for the council. And then on the OEOs, rather than getting in their way, I think my answer would be that my understanding is they'd love to do more, but right now the level of funding gives us a 52-year waiting list.
Yeah, I would also say on the side of that, I think we heard from people is that we should ask the OEO above the CAP agencies to look at their mission and incorporate the reduction of carbon because I think we're hearing the lines are crossing between reducing energy and reducing carbon. So, and it's not part of their mission to even consider carbon. So how do we get them within their mission to look at that?
So I agree. And so as we look at what we're about to see, we keep those other issues in mind when we try to figure out how to best roll out and what we're about to learn.
Okay. Anything more at this moment? And we can go around again. So I tried to come up with the shortest goal, but most succinct. And compared to where we started a month ago, the biggest change here to me is that we've, now we're putting transportation in right from the get-go. So reduce emissions in thermal and transportation sectors, and which I think is 80% of Vermont emissions. So it'd be a big thing taken together.
Mr. Chairman, while we're on the question,
Senator McCormick, sorry, I didn't see your hand.
No, that's right. We have we have a long-standing practice of not chewing our cabbage twice. Often if something is dealt with, then if you want to deal with it the next session, people will say, well, we dealt with it last time. And I'm wondering if anything we do is likely to prejudice the Senate against considering what are perhaps more ambitious approaches than what we come up with. If we are going to do something, I would hope that we would have the most ambitious approach that anyone is likely to take in the near future. Because otherwise, I think it prejudices the Senate against doing anything more.
Okay. That's a good point. There's sort of, what do you call it? Compassion fatigue at some point. Like, yeah, I
Yeah.
worried about that last year. I don't want to
That's
worry
right.
about it again already. Okay.
I had a friend say that to me once about the threat of nuclear war. He said, "Come on, Dick, you've been on this for years." He was tired of thinking about nuclear war.
So can I, in the goal, and this may not fit here, and we may do it down in, but I think there really is a nexus between the economics for families now and the reduction of carbon. And if you use less gas, if you use less heating oil, you're going to. Is there a way in the our goal is to make sure that our programs reflect that?
You know, the reason I wrote this so baldly about emissions was, Senator Westman, you had said, well, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, look, we're all sitting here in the Natural Resources and Energy Committee. So what's really bringing us into this discussion is greenhouse gases. And so that's why I was sort of focused just on that. But I agree entirely that if there's anything I've learned more about is the profound connections to families' budgets, especially when we learned about transportation the other day. Let me put it in.
I'm eager to see what you've rolled out, and you probably know what we're likely to, the questions we'll be asking ourselves as you roll it out. So,
okay, I'll go forward. Is this
both barrels
showing? Is this showing fine on your screen now?
Yes.
Okay. Means. How are we doing this? So deliver an energy service program that saves Vermonters money on heating their homes and meets their transportation needs while also reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So I think that's pretty much lined up with what Senator Westman was just bringing up, I think.
Yeah.
If anyone has anything, shout it out. Senator Campion had to step out for something, but maybe he'll be back before we're done. Program design. So using the existing pool of entities delivering energy savings to Vermonters, the so-called ecosystem, not saying that it's like a locked universe. For instance, I don't think in this committee we had heard about VHFA doing work before. So I want to be explicit about that, but they're part of that existing pool of, when they're doing housing, they're considering energy. So I'm considering them in that pool at any rate. Currently delivered primarily through, and so these are the people we've been talking to the most, who are already really leading on this, our energy efficiency utilities, our community action agencies, and private contractors like Jim Bradley was just in. Create a program too, and so here's where the rubber hits the road. What's our goal? 120,000 homes in the next decade. And I didn't know how to define this one. How do we define our transportation goals? And this is, I hear, so I don't know what people have for thoughts. And let me just pass over that for a minute and come back to it. The other thing is, and that the program should develop and support an integrated system of counseling and service delivery that targets low-income and moderate-income Vermonters, treating participants with dignity and empowering them. So I really wanted to make sure we talked about this as being a really good, positive experience in people's lives, not only for their wallet, but maybe to put them in a better place.
So in defining the transportation goals, we have a statewide plan and we set out here's where we want to be with that. And they have done estimates on how many electric vehicles we would have to be able to meet those goals.
Right, and
Yes,
you're reminding
keep
me that the EAN getting to Paris chart, whatever we call it,
Yep.
shows levels of need. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know the state. I don't think I may have glanced the state transportation plan, but not. I haven't studied it. Can you say a little more, Senator Westman? What's usually in there? Does it get into the nitty gritty of okay, if you're trying to.
Yeah, that doesn't get into there, but there are groups that have, you have that, the Transportation Center at the University of Vermont that has been, you know, I think they might be somebody to talk to.
Okay, great. All right. So that'll be helpful. Anything more? You know, I'm putting words in our mouth here on this one, but I think that's where we were as a committee. Sound about right?
I have a view on how transportation and homes are fundamentally different. And I hope that we take that up, but in this presentation, how do we let the folks who are going to read it and evaluate it understand the fundamental differences between transportation and home owning, as far as getting the money and as far as meeting expectations in a timely way.
Could you say a little more, Mark, about what those fundamental differences are?
Well, in homes, a home is a home today, and it's home tomorrow, and it's a home the next day. And when you weatherize it, it is forever weatherized from that point on. Your money and your spending and your planning is, there's no delay between when you set forth the program and when you begin to see the results. With transportation, every year you don't tackle transportation, you have new automobiles coming on the line, and you have a 12-year or 14-year period where the pig inside the snake has to work all the way through the snake, and it takes 12 years for what you've done to begin to show up for the average person. So that the approach to those two things, or the timing of those two things on results, are vastly different are different challenges for the two things we're looking at here. And I think you have to keep that in mind, and that's the way I look at it. So
I would say, Mark, I think you're correct about the weatherization of the house, as long as you have somebody that knows what they're doing.
Yes, yeah.
Because
as long as you don't
I'm not,
make the house rot when it gets sick. Yeah.
What I learned this morning is I'm not hiring Senator McCormick to do my installation.
I've learned the hard way.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So then, I didn't go look up these numbers, but we can get them easily enough. So just so that as we look at where we're going, I wanted to get a snapshot of where we are. And I think I forget the numbers here, but it's, we're in the neighborhood of 2,000 homes a year for weatherization. And we can get the count of, low income versus the market-based folks, the non-low income weatherization projects. I don't know that I've seen the data on, back to where we started with what brings this committee to the table in a way is greenhouse gas reductions. I don't know that we have a clear picture on what we're gaining in terms of greenhouse gas reductions, but we should start to see how they fit into the statutory goals. So I'm going to add that. How do they put us on the pathway to meeting statutory goals? Okay. Then other simple data, how many EVs and plug-in hybrid electrics do we have? Back to some of the most recent conversations, X-vehicle MPG upgrades. So we were talking about, yes, you can't get everyone into an EV perhaps, but can you help them? It seems like that's what we were hearing on Mileage Smart. Can you get them into a higher mileage internal combustion engine vehicle? You can go from,
and that's 92% of the vehicles we have today fit that category. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, let me add that big reminder. 92% of all vehicles are ICE. Okay. So that's the it's the Willie Sutton, right?
Right. Yes. Well said.
You've trained me over the years. I know these cues. I can't remember how many days it was from declaring war to D-Day, but 1413.
1336.
1336. I'll get that.
Close.
To D-Day. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That different. Never mind. Go ahead.
Yep. We use the D-Day metric in here.
No.
And from there to lay out these targets. So this number was we already specified it. But we haven't said, those same things again. So we would go through and start to name these 2, 3, and 4 as the goals. What are we aiming for? Okay. If there's anything else people are looking at and saying, here's another quantifiable measure that we would want to include, we can add it now, or if you think of it later. And then program elements. So keep us marching along. We know we need long-term sustainable money to meet and that it's scalable. I think that's the other thing we haven't really talked about much yet, that whatever we have for like year 2 is going to be a lot less than what we're going to need in year 8. And can we think about revenue sources that could scale to a growing program over time with a minimum of struggle? I mean, so you can change a rate, whatever, something like that. And jump in if you see anything you want to change, add, note, whatever. It's just sort of a memory document for all of us. Second, that funding should be multi-streamed, and that we need to support grants, loans, and then program operations, system overhead. The conversation we had with department and PUC yesterday, that money management piece, including how the money's received, allocations, and then performance evaluation, so we meet our fiduciary responsibilities and so that we meet our statutory goals, or know that we're on the pathway to meeting them, or know that what we're doing is not enough to meet them, and it will help define other work, complementary work to be done by this committee and others. Next one, workforce development. Develop a workforce sufficient to support work to meet the targets. Workforce development, and I put down at least 3 aspects. Will make, I think we heard more things today, but training candidates, training for traditional fuel dealer personnel moving into this work. Part of our, let's not leave behind people who are already in the business of helping people heat their homes. New workers from related trades such as carpenters, electricians, plumbers, and then new workforce entrants such as from technical education centers, and then other. So other today, one of the ones that I had not heard anyone mention before was military, New Americans, women in the workforce. I've heard people talk about, but we didn't have them on any list. Anything?
Prejudiced.
Any other ones? Let's see. Oh, there was also hospitality workers. I don't, who knows on that one. If the pandemic becomes truly and entirely a thing of the past within another year, do most of those people flow back to those jobs, or are we offering them another option? And then I'll just say, I'm going to put this in because Jim Bradley used it, and I thought it was a useful thing for us to be thinking about in terms of helping people, I don't know, have a more attractive label, something that in the clean energy economy. Okay. Anything else? All right, moving on to obstacles. So we heard the need for comprehensive services, counseling at the level and in the manner required to help the client succeed. It'll vary by client. Some folks might just need to get on EVT's website, but other people need the kitchen table conversation that we heard about over things like car loans and energy work and financial management. Senator Westman.
A piece of this is also attitudes, and you can't change attitudes unless you do something. Sit down and talk to people in that human way, you got a better chance. They all right now want an F-150, or at least Mark McDonald wants an F-150, and
250 or 350 actually.
Yeah, or whatever it is. And you're never going to be able to change their mind unless you sit down and give them information. If it's got to start with some kind of a conversation.
I want to buy a Corvette, same thing.
Yeah, if you don't have somebody sitting down giving you alternatives to that, you're never going to even think about it.
So, yes, but what if you're not going to change your mind?
Well, if
buy one anyway.
I don't know what to do about that. But if somebody is willing to change their mind, talking to them and counseling them and treating them like I think that's worth it.
Okay, so yes, question, Rich. I'm not saying that people, if you want to buy an F-150, you want to buy a Corvette, well, you're free to buy one.
Yeah, you're gonna.
But that's where the revenue can be collected to help people who don't want to buy cars like that, but can't even find the cars they want to buy on used car lots. Those people that want to buy an F-150 that are buying more and more because the companies can depreciate them in 1 year instead of 5, and the prices are lower and lower. That's where you find the money to fund the cars that you wish to get on the road. So you have a smaller pig going through the snake.
Yeah,
you can't change their mind.
Yeah, but I think it's an
Okay.
obstacle
Done in
that
the
if
mud.
somebody
I'm gonna
is,
answer that, but that's how I see it. Yeah.
yeah, and I appreciate that,
Done
Mark.
in the mud.
But I think separate from that, there are these people that they can't envision anything different. If we can create another vision for them that they can see works and look at the bottom line and say, it will be better off for me over the next 5 years to do it this way instead of that way, I think we've gained something. Even if it's, you know,
For the people that will rethink the wisdom of purchasing such a vehicle and see the community spirit or, you know, patriotism or their
I don't think-
grandchildren's future by buying a smaller vehicle, that's good. For the ones that are going to do it anyway, that's revenue source.
well,
The more that you convince with what you're suggesting, the
They're joining
better.
the Bible.
Hallelujah. Yeah. Through counseling, through persuasion. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hallelujah.
I think there's some people, Mark, that if you show them what the bottom line of doing it a different way is, they might choose to do it that way. And I think there's just some people, they can't see their way out of the box.
So Senator Westman, does this capture what you're talking about? You know, showing alternatives that they then want to select, for instance, for saving money?
Yeah, and give them the information to be able to see a different life.
Right. Okay. And then this one I've just put in, this came up yesterday. It's not exactly what Senator McDonald's talking about, but it's along those lines. So if you're trying to steer choices, you might make the incentives available only for things that were higher mileage. Okay, this one really came up loud and clear this morning. Again, but maybe clearer than ever. Support. Let me take out this. Support existing energy codes. And I guess there was another piece to that, which was support registering. Part of doing that really entails support registering builders. And then we heard and include ongoing education certification.
So this is support energy codes on vehicles here.
No, sorry. Oh no, that's why the word building was there. Support existing. I'll move it over here. Building energy codes. So, for instance, the RBs.
So the lesson we had this morning was that our building codes, the existing ones, are great for saving money, but not for preserving the life of homes and the health of the residents. So is that an upgrade existing energy codes, or consider health and rot in add to existing energy codes?
Rot's very on target. Health, air quality, rot in existing. I think they are actually there, but I don't know that.
Okay.
I think what he was saying is, if you don't follow them carefully enough, you end up creating those problems. But let's
whatever the energy codes are, damn well follow them. And
So,
the next question is, do you need to modify them? Which is a separate question. Yeah. Do they have to be followed, and should they be enhanced? Two questions.
Okay.
can I comment on Mark's snake
Please.
who keeps bringing up? I'm reading this out of the Vermont Transportation Energy Profile, which is on the UVM Transportation Vermont has the lowest average vehicle age at 9.7 years of any state in the country, but it's still 9.7 years. And 40% of all of our cars were purchased before 2010. So that speaks to your snake. But
Yep.
but I was surprised that that's out of the Vermont Transportation Energy Profile.
That's the average, and the average, excellent statistic. And the average age that Jared DeVal gave us for the owned vehicles owned by median income people was 12 years.
Yep.
So they're buying, which we know is obvious, the older, even less efficient automobiles. Yeah. So those are an interesting pair of statistics, and they have a chart. Coincide. Yeah.
Yep, they have a chart that by age of vehicle going back to 1980 that you can see how many vehicles of every type are on the road.
And Senator Westman, what website are you on?
I'm reading the Vermont Transportation Energy Profile.
Okay.
It
and
is
it's at UVM.
Well, UVM, they can do it, but the Vermont Transportation Energy Profile is put out by VTrans, but okay. They use the UVM Transportation Center.
Okay.
To
great. This one we talked about a week or so ago. Hasn't really come up again, except for tangentially today when we're talking about green appraisers. If you're going to have a really rational system, someone has to be able to see that value, record that value of the energy improvements, so that when you talk to a bank, they too can see, or potential buyer of your home, that they too can see that value. I'm going to keep marching along because it's 11:02. Things still to be defined. So timelines for action on weatherization and transportation. Does weatherization lead transportation, or can we advance both in this bill? And when we came in, I was thinking almost entirely just weatherization. Honestly, now I would consider it a big missed opportunity if we didn't move something together, even if we can't do as much work yet on transportation as we could on weatherization. I don't know how others feel about that one. Any opinions? Are we biting off more than we can chew to put weatherization into the frame of this bill? Or are we missing out such a crucial element that it's kind of silly to leave it out?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. The bill starts out containing weatherization and automobiles.
And transportation.
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
If they're going to be in the same bill, they should, any recommendations or suggestions on one or the other should be in separate parts of the bill. They shouldn't be bouncing back and forth. Yeah.
But
okay.
Yeah.
But I would say if even if they're in two separate pieces of the bill, I think if you bring money to the issue, it carries the whole package a little bit. So, right. And what I would say to you is that if we have a package of ideas in a bill, I think that fits better together with policy to carry it to an appropriations committee down the hall and say, and I'm hoping it's down the hall soon, it carries the whole package. But I do think Mark's right. You have a policy section, and then you would have a money section.
I think,
So,
I would just, where they belong together, weatherization and transportation, is that they are the two big energy issues. We've been focused for so long on how we generate electricity, but the real villains are transportation and home heating. And so I think they both, but Mark is right, there should be different sections of the bill, perhaps mentioned together early in the bill, as in terms of that this is an attempt to address the two biggest problems.
And there might be the
then
problem
keep
to
them
be
separate.
solved in each one, Roman numeral 1 and Roman numeral 2, different challenges, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Should we establish a working group to address the entwined funding and management needs?
Benefit.
And that, to me, that means like, how do we solve so that next year, as we would move into year 2 of money that just got allocated, that there are no cliffs, as a matter of fact, that we keep building. And that doesn't feel like something we're going to solve between now and crossover.
Oh, you mean we're not going to solve how to get the money, no.
Yeah, okay. So that's my proposal. I don't know if that seems, sometimes people think doing a working group is just putting off a problem. In this case, I think there's a genuine need to learn more and then put together a package. Right. Create a flow chart with steps and actors. Identify current strengths, weaknesses, and gaps in that flow. So I'm just trying to make sure that we see how, say this is entirely green lighted, like, okay, so what's the timeline of steps? I think we have a sense, funding, workforce, implementation, but I'm sort of putting my old project manager's hat on. I'd love to have a timeline that we could look at and see that it would help us see what's going to happen when, and it would help us identify things we hadn't thought about enough yet or had missed entirely. I also, as I was working on this last night, came to realize I wasn't sure about the difference, the next one on the funding. What are the differences between on-bill financing versus to-the-meter financing? I think we heard both terms related to pays and what the guys from DC presented to us yesterday.
So you said on the bill versus
to the meter. And I think with that latter referring to, you don't own the loan, you don't own the cost of that improvement. It sort of lives at the meter. Whoever happens to be paying the bill that month continues to pay the cost of having made those improvements.
Well, I'm trying to understand how they're different, because when you had in Silo's thing, when the residents went on to a new owner or a new renter, in the case that the renters were paying the utility, the new renter picked up it paid the bills.
Right, right.
How is that different from on the bill or on the meter?
Yeah, I don't know. And I just put it down. I think sometimes people use on-bill financing to mean if your utility actually gave you a loan, if they fronted the costs to do the improvements in your home, and now you paid the utility back, but it was actually, so you're financing it, it's on your bill, but it's really a loan to you, the homeowner, as opposed to this to the meter concept where it sort of lives at the meter and whoever's paying the bill pays that, but they don't personally hold the obligation for that full loan.
So the electric company performs a ministerial service to collect on behalf of the actual entity from which you borrowed the money, as opposed to the utility being the loaner of record and collecting its own funds. Is that the difference?
Right. Well, so exactly. I don't know for sure, and I just
That
figured
was,
we want to figure
Knowing
that
the
one out.
difference is central to coming up with the solution.
Yeah, that was my biggest question about everything they talked about, is who is putting the money up front to start the weatherization or the work and on the on-bill funds. Is it the utility company? What I heard was in Hawaii, they have some sort of a green fund that I think might be but I'm not really sure of what were the options around who fronted the money for these plans.
So we need to
Right.
ask those witnesses or someone who can tell us the difference, and then we can perhaps answer this.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Great. Right. And they
Just
mentioned
for the record, Mr.
USDA.
Chair, I called the gentleman who the first witness from yesterday and spoke to him after the meeting, and I just he was eager to come back and speak. If you're looking for someone to help us with the difference. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I thought that was, we've had some very good witnesses in for helping us learn about things lately. And then, this came up yesterday with the PUC and the department. What statutory changes are needed to support the program? I don't really know how this next section is different than the one we were just in. Things to learn more about. I should probably combine them. Funding, bonding, and leverage. One of the things I'm sort of hearing from people is, well, the reason you use government money is so that you can go out and leverage private dollars and then amplify the program by leveraging the money. So I don't know that much about how that, well, let me say it another way. I only know a little about that. So I'd love to know more about that when it fits into this funding conversation. And Senator Westman, you were talking about, I'm forgetting the name. Was it like private capital? Private something. I'm forgetting what the term was you used.
Which one?
On bonding, that there's another kind of bonding. It's not on the state's books, but it's also, there's a limit to how much we can do.
They're private activity bonds. That's how we funded, VHSA and housing. That's how we, VSAC has used private activity bonds to give out student loans in the past. There's
Okay. Another funding one here, we've mentioned it. I'd love to follow up, and this is another, maybe a working group thing, following up with healthcare and AHS. The thing that occurs to me is, we spend the state budget and what we spend on healthcare are almost the same size. They're like $6-7 billion. So you don't need a very large portion of a $6 billion pool to make a meaningful contribution. And there's a genuine connection in terms of things like indoor air quality, asthma, cardiopulmonary disease, things like that. LIHEAP, just sort of looking long-term as this program we're talking about grows, how's LIHEAP impacted? Can LIHEAP funds, will there be a decreasing need for LIHEAP monies, and could they then flow into this work? The vehicle.
That would come under the category of sales pitch to our colleagues and people that were interested. If we come up with something, that would be a selling point, and the numbers ought to be fairly accurate within a certain guidelines. But
I think the other thing
it's not
I
a
think the other
funding
thing,
source.
yeah,
Yeah,
is that we want to be very careful, not because we're not talking about defunding, to talk about defunding our LIHEAP commitment. Because that's not what we're talking about, but it could,
We're
you
not
know, you take
talking
it to
about,
the,
we're not talking about defunding it. We're talking about reducing the need for it.
right.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Money saved is equal to income. That's the idea.
Yes.
Right. So B, get rid of that. Careful to talk about reducing the need. Great. This is the Orange County provision. Can we improve the mix of new cars being sold, incentives for higher mileage vehicles?
You can. Would the solutions offered be accepted?
Yeah, right. All right, and this brings us to the last thing, which will be perfect for thinking about any possible changes to next week's agenda. So, you know, my regular refrain, what questions do you want answered and from whom would you like to hear? That's an actual live question to you. It's not rhetorical. Anything off the, it's a little hard to do this because there is a draft agenda that I wanted us to be able to look at. So maybe I'm going to save this. Thank you, everyone. Keep track of what we're doing here. And this is 2-3 now. So, and save. Great. Jude, do you have our draft? You know, we're on the floor in 13 minutes. So maybe we
I
can just
sent
do,
you the latest version that I have. It's
okay.
called Agenda Point 5 or something like that. The 5, it's
Great.
number 5.
Thank
I
you.
just sent it maybe 20 minutes ago, half an hour ago.
There it is. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to stop that one and I'm going to open. I think it's, I'm looking at these tiny, tiny squares. It's a little impossible to read. Let me see if I've got the right one. Does this say February 16 through February 19 agenda?
And it also has this time that I sent it to you or changed it, 10:47.
Oh, great. Okay, so our most current version.
Well, but that's yours because mine doesn't look like that. Well, maybe.
All
I
right.
don't know.
Well, at any rate, so let's just use this as an outline of things to talk about, and we'll be tuning who comes in and all the rest still. However, just in terms of making sure that people are hearing, I mean, that you see things on here that match up with questions you have. So what we have online is hearing from the governor on the EV funding. Actually, I'm going to make an edit here that we want to hear about the other piece of the spending is the state energy management plan. That'll complete our tour of governor's budget energy spending. Rich Cowart's working on a complementary proposal that really speaks in part to what Matt Coda was speaking about, renewable. How do we look at fuels and reduce the carbon impacts? So I'll just leave it at that. Back to what this question we just talked about briefly, what's an on-bill tariff or to the meter, and how might it work with all the partners that are already out there? So we already have people doing this work, the distribution utilities and the EUs. Check in with them to make sure that as we think about designing something, the people who would actually be on the front lines have chipped in and told us what they have to think. We've had questions about what VHFA might do with the governor's proposed 16. How is it going to be divvied up? What is it? What happens with that money? What does it accomplish? So we've had questions about that. Senator Westman has been kind enough to follow up with JFO and to try to get us some accounting for all the money. VHCC, so Vermont Housing and Conservation Coalition, it's their annual visit. So they are coming in to keep us in tune, up to date on how they've been spending the allocations we've been approving year after year. Then we have that caucus of the whole with Dr. Levine. Moving on to Thursday, money workflows and workforce development. So this is bearing down on the question of, okay, we know there's a need for workforce development. Here are some of the frontline actors. Let's hear from them, so we're not guessing what would be helpful to them to build at scale. I would say it's great to hear from Ms. Phillips at OEO, state OEO. They're talking about receiving, being budgeted 20% more than the current year and 20% more in the year 2. Although that's definitely a step in the right direction. It's a pretty modest pace of growth when we're talking about doublings and doublings again. So how does money flow? Is there anyone else who has a capacity to accept more? And then Friday, finishing up again, I'm sure we'll do this along the way, but bill editing, committee discussion, and the next agenda. And that is everything in a very packed morning. Any comments before we sign off?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Oh, go ahead.
Thanks. I don't know if we need witnesses on this. Maybe it can be done by memo, but we should know what the climate caucus, the climate task force is doing, so that we don't get in the way, or that they don't get in our way. That the like two people sharing a kitchen. We want to make sure that we're somewhat coordinated with them, or at least staying out of their way. So again, perhaps a testimony, a progress report is testimony, or maybe just an inquiry by the chair.
Okay. So we had Secretary Morin to start this week, and who gave us a very brief update on it. Are you looking for more detail than what she laid out? I mean, remember they walked us through a timeline.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, I know. I think we want to stay in touch, but I think in particular as we develop legislation, we want to run that by them.
Okay, well that's an interesting. I would say we're the legislature, so I want to stay in touch with them. I wouldn't want to defer to a council that's
I'm not suggesting we defer. I'm suggesting we know what we're doing.
Sure. Okay. So, and stay in sync.
Yeah. So, and I didn't mean that to sound, when I say didn't know what we're doing, that was not intended to be as hostile.
Understand the nuances.
Yeah.
I've got the shared kitchen in there now. Senator Westman?
So I sent you, Senator Bray, the energy profile. We do a transportation energy plan every 6 years. And I would encourage you to look at like page 57 of the report. It says that in 2015, the baseline was that 5.5% of all of our transportation energy came from renewable sources. And the goal in that is to go to 10% by 2025. And so they ought to be able to provide you with what does that mean in physical vehicles? How many will have to be electric? How many to get to that? And the other piece about that is the transportation energy plan will be updated this next year.
So that focuses on how many switch from one energy source to another. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah,
okay, that doesn't include ethanol.
I can't tell you the details of it, Mark. Just you know, that's why I think that
it's 11:26, guys.
Okay.
Yep.
But it,
okay, the agency of transportation contracts with the UVM Transportation Center to do this. I think at some point we probably want to see what they said.
And it does it include an analysis of if vehicles simply got better gas mileage, how much? That's not a switch. That's an elimination of.
These charts that are like 50 odd pages into the thing are
for another time.
Talk about renewable.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so thank you everyone for a really productive morning. I will send this marked up outline out to everyone, and it's very helpful. It will give us a bit of a blueprint to start getting drafting out of Ledge Council. And with that,